Bruchim Abayim, welcome everyone. What an honor, what a pleasure and privilege it is to once again participate in Beth Jacob's annual adult learning program. It is really a zechus for me to be able to share some Divrei Torah with you. This year the subject matter is the Aseret HaDibros, and I have the honor of speaking about the fifth commandment, honor your father and mother. This class is sponsored by Reb Aaron and Gitti Golding in honor of one of my dearest friends, one of the people in this world that I admire more than anyone, Reb Gedalia Schwartz, Dr. Gedalia Schwartz, who is involved on a daily basis in disseminating Torah, disseminating Shiurim, and I want to offer Reb Gedalia my humble brachos for success for him and his whole family, good health, parnasa berevach, v'yimali Hashem kol mishalois libay l'toiva. This year is also sponsored by Stewie and Rhoda Gleischer in honor of their parents, Label Ben Yitzchak Halevi, whose yahrzeit is on the 15th of Teves, Hinda Bas Yido Machal, yahrzeit on the 28th of Teves, Moshe Ben Avraham of the 6th of Iyar, and Etta Bas Joseph on the 16th of Tammuz. And in honor of Rabbi Emmanuel and Rebbetzin Estelle Feldman, Rabbi Yisrael and Rebbetzin Libby Horowitz, and Rabbi Yitzchak and Rebbetzin Batya Goodman. Okay, good evening everyone, and it is my good fortune to share with you some thoughts about the mitzvah of Kibbud Av V'Im. And instead of speaking about, perhaps, about some of the minutiae, or some of the halachos, I would like to present to you the mitzvah of Kibbud Av V'Im in a historical context, understanding its role in the development of the Jewish people and in the destiny of the Jewish people. Let's begin with our patriarch, Yaakov Avinu. You know, Yaakov Avinu comes into the world in an unusual set of circumstances. Yaakov Avinu was born, of course, together with his twin brother Esav, and they're vying already in utero. And Esav comes out first, and the pasuk says, "V'yacharechein yatsa achiv," and afterwards his brother came out. V'yadai yochezes ba'akev Esav, and Yaakov's hand was grabbing onto the heel of Esav. And therefore, Vayikra Shema Yaakov, therefore they called his name Yaakov, because he was holding on to the heel of Esav. Can I ask you a simple question? Is this moment in the life of Yaakov so seminal that they named him because he's holding on to the heel of Esav? I mean, we know how important a name is. A name is supposed to capture the essence of something. Our sages tell us that when Adam was created, so the angels said to God, God, who is this guy? What is this? So God said, his wisdom is greater than yours. The angels said, how so? So God paraded before Adam all the various animals. And Adam said, this is a chamar, this is a donkey, this is a sus, this is a horse, this is a gamal, this is a camel. And the angels were amazed. And then the angels said, and what's his name? And Adam said, my name should be Adam, because I was created min ha'adamah, from the earth. And God said, and what's my name? And Adam said, your name is Aleph Daled Nun Yud, Adoi, and then Noi, because you're the master of everything. And the angels conceded, indeed, Adam's wisdom was greater than theirs. Why? Because he had the great chachma to be able to give a name. A name is something that captures the essence of something. With the word chamar or sus, Adam Rishon was able to probe the depth of the character and the personality of that particular animal and give it that name. So, was it such a seminal moment in the life of Yaakov Avinu that he was holding on to Esav's heel? So his name is now Heel? I mean, it doesn't sound very nice. Why would we name him Akev Yaakov? By the way, why was he holding on to the heel of Esav? Why isn't he holding on to his nose or some other part of his body? Why is he grabbing the heel? So it's interesting, Tosfos writes because Esav is represented by the pig. And the pig has one redeeming quality, it has one kosher symbol. It has split hooves. So Esav's heel, his foot, was the kosher symbol of Esav, the split hooves of Esav. So Yaakov is only touching and coming into contact with the one part of Esav that is still pure. The Yismach Moshe writes just the opposite, that Yaakov was holding on by holding on to his heel, so that infused sanctity into the foot of Esav. That's why the pig has split hooves, because Yaakov was holding on to it, and it transformed the foot of Esav into something that is redeemable. But it's interesting. Why don't we call him Akev? After all, he's named Yaakov because he was holding on to the heel of Esav, so call him heel straight up. Where did the Yud come from? By the same token, why is Esav called Esav? Because he was born fully formed, he was hairy, he was asoy, made. Rashi says that he's called Esav because he is asoy, he's made. So why call him Esav? Where did the Yud go? So Yaakov has an extra Yud, and Esav is missing the Yud. He should be called Asoy. Megala Amukais, one of the early Mikobalim, he says, well actually, Esav was originally spelled Ayin Sin Vav Yud. The tail end of Esav was the Yud. Yaakov was holding on to the heel, he was holding on to the Yud of Esav, and he grabbed the Yud from Esav, and he took it for himself. And the symbolism of that Yud is very compelling and striking, namely, Ki beka Hashem tzor olamim. God created matter with Ka, Yud and Hey. Hey, he created this world. Yud, he created the world to come. The Yud represents Olam Haba. Yaakov wanted his life to be focused on the world to come, and he grabbed the Yud away from Esav, and he forged it, and he fused it onto his own name. But this is all a digression. The question is, why was Yaakov holding on to the heel of Esav so seminal in the life of Yaakov that he's named after that important event? So, I recently celebrated the bar mitzvah of my son, Naftali. So I was in the mode of thinking about bar mitzvahs, and one thing I saw in some of my research is that when a bar mitzvah boy would visit the great Talmid Chacham of our time, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzak Levracha, and the boy would ask Reb Chaim, now I'm becoming bar mitzvah, is there any one particular mitzvah that I should focus on, not to the exclusion of other mitzvahs, but to place special emphasis on? Reb Chaim Kanievsky would always say, focus on Kabed Asavicha V'Yasimecha, honor your father and mother. And Reb Chaim would quote a statement of the Yushalmi that gives an example of someone who focuses on a particular mitzvah. The mitzvah the Yushalmi gives is honor your father and mother, and that's certainly worthy of our attention. Why, of all the mitzvahs, would Reb Chaim encourage a bar mitzvah boy to focus on the mitzvah of Kabed Asavicha V'Yasimecha? Furthermore, I encountered a very interesting story about the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish was Reb Chaim Kanievsky's illustrious and saintly uncle, one of the great halachic decisors of the 20th century. And the Chazon Ish was once giving a farhera, giving a test to the young boys in the yeshiva and the cheder in Bnei Brak. And he was asking them various questions about what they were learning. And one kid raises his hand, ooh, ooh, ooh. And the Rebbe tried to motion, put your hand down. The Chazon Ish, he asks you the questions. You don't ask him the questions. But the boy would not let up. Ooh! So the Chazon Ish said, well, I see you have a question you want to ask. Listen, hold on to the question. I'll be happy to answer it after the test. So after the test was over, the boy, he's raising his hand. Yeah, what would you like to ask? He says, Rebbe, how did you become the Chazon Ish? And this must have been the toughest question Chazon Ish ever got in his life. How do you become the Chazon? How is he supposed to answer that? I mean, is there a way to answer that question within the realm of modesty? And Chazon Ish thought for a few long and hard seconds, and he says it was in the merit of the honor I displayed to my parents. And that's also worthy of our attention. We understand Kabir Savicha V'Yasimecha is fundamental, it's in the Ten Commandments, but that it should be, that it is responsible for propelling this individual to become one of the greatest Torah sages in our history. What is so critical about Kibbud Av V'Em? You know, Reb Aaron Leib Steinman, also one of the great tzaddikim of the 20th century of Bnei Brak, he observes a remarkable phenomenon. You know, my father, should live and be well, he grew up very differently than I did. I grew up, I had, Baruch Hashem, parents, and I had 4 grandparents. I knew all my grandparents. I even knew some of my great-grandparents. My children, Baruch Hashem, they have 4 grandparents, and they had many, many great-grandparents. But my father, growing up, he not only didn't have great-grandparents, he didn't have grandparents. My grandparents, his parents our Holocaust survivors, and their parents did not survive. And Reb Aaron Leib Steinman points out a very unusual phenomenon, that in our times, we have a unique opportunity and phenomenon that many, many people grow up, many children grow up with grandparents, with great-grandparents, and in the generation before, this was unheard of. In my parents' class, it was a rarity to have grandparents, and nowadays, it's commonplace. And Reb Aaron Leib Steinman offered the following insight. Says Reb Aaron Leib Steinman, we're now in the final generation before the coming of Mashiach. And we need to overcome our enemies, we need to overcome Esav. And we need to deliver the final knockout punch to Esav. And you see Esav today, Rome, the Western world, the philosophies that are antithetical to the values of the Torah. There is one mitzvah, although they may be bereft of zechusim, of merit, there is one mitzvah that fuels them. Esav is always fueled by one particular mitzvah that he excelled in an unparalleled way. We know when Yaakov Avinu was coming back from the house of Lavan and he was going to face Esav, the pasuk says, Vayira Yaakov Ma'od, Yaakov was very afraid. And our sages tell us that Yaakov was afraid because Esav was bolstered, was supported by the merit of Kibbud Av V'Em. Nobody honored their father like Esav. Even Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, the great Tana, said that I don't hold a candle to Esav in the realm of Kibbud Av V'Em because Esav would honor his father wearing special begadim, special clothing. And I'm just not on that level to do that. And therefore, in order to overcome the merit of Esav in the last generation, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to provide us with extra opportunity to be mekayim the mitzvah of honor your father and mother. And therefore in our generation, you have sometimes grandparents who are still caring for their elderly parents. This is a phenomenon that is unheard of in the entire history of the Jewish people. And the answer and the explanation, says Reb Aaron Leib Steinman, is in order to deliver the final knockout punch to Esav. The Rebbeinu Shalom grants us in the 21st century extra opportunity that our parents, our grandparents live longer so that we could honor them longer to be able to deliver the final knockout punch to Esav. What an astounding revelation, what an astounding insight. But we have to ask ourselves, why is it that the battleground between the Jewish people and the nations of the world is over this mitzvah of honor your father and mother? Why is this the fundamental mitzvah? That we're vying against Esav, that is bolstering Esav, that is supporting Esav, that we have to now excel in order to deliver this final knockout punch before Mashiach comes. You know, it's very interesting that when Yaakov Avinu, masqueraded as Esav, comes in to bring his father the meal to be able to get the brachos, so Yitzchak Avinu says, he takes a deep breath and he smells the aroma of what Yaakov is bringing into the room, and the pasuk says, Re'eh reach beni kireach sada asher bercha Hashem. See this aroma, my son. It's like the aroma of a field that God has blessed. Rashi comments, Melamed shenichnesa imay reach Gan Eden. From here we see that with Yaakov Avinu enters the aroma of the Garden of Eden. Yaakov Avinu was coming in to serve his father, to bring his father a delicious meal, and accompanying Yaakov Avinu was the delectable aroma, fragrance of the Garden of Eden. Why? Why was that fragrance accompanying Yaakov Avinu? Certainly Yaakov Avinu was fulfilling the mitzvah of Kibbud Av Ha'im, but we don't find any other performance of a mitzvah that is accompanied by the aroma of the Garden of Eden. Let's discuss briefly who is the nemesis of Esav. Who is the force that counteracts Esav? Who is the force that destroys Esav? So if you remember, Yaakov got married and he had Ruvain, he had Shimon, he had Levi, he had Yehuda, he had Yisachar, he has Zevulun, and he's still living with his in-laws. I mean, that is a lot of time to spend with the in-laws. You know, people, they have a baby or two, and that's usually the time that people go home. No, Yaakov, one after another. But the pasuk says, "Vayehi kasher yolda Rachel es Yosef." When Rachel gave birth to Yosef, what happened? Vayomer Yaakov el Lavan. Yaakov says to Lavan, "Shalacheni, send me away. Send me away. Ve'elcha makoymi la'artzi, and I'm going to go to my place and to my land." What happened when Yosef was born? It's interesting, Rashi tells us that Yosef is the nemesis of Esav. Yosef is the counterforce to Esav. He's what we call sitnai shel Esav. Yaakov is akin to a fire. Yosef is the flame. Esav is the straw. So when Yosef was born, the force to be able to destroy Esav was now present. So Yaakov said, okay, now I could face my brother Esav. That's interesting. If we could suggest, why was Rachel, why did she have the merit to produce the nemesis of Esav, the destructive force of Esav? We could suggest that Lavan had two daughters, Rachel and Leah. And the word on the street was Leah was going to marry Esav, and Rachel was going to marry Yaakov. And when Rachel allowed Yaakov to marry Leah, so she's now endangering herself to fall into the lot of Esav. Because Leah was going to marry Esav, but now that her sister's marrying Yaakov, now maybe she's going to marry Esav. After all, it's very interesting that when later on in life, when Rachel could not conceive, and finally she had Yosef, so she named him Yosef, that now that she has a child, she doesn't have to worry that Yaakov would banish her and she would have to marry Esav. So we see that there was a real possibility that Rachel would have to marry Esav. So think about what Rachel did by allowing her sister to marry Yaakov. She placed herself in jeopardy of falling into the lot of Esav. So Hashem says, Rachel, you gave up of yourself to be able to give your sister this opportunity. You were maver al midosav. You gave up your destiny and you gave it to your sister so she shouldn't be ashamed. Not only are you going to not fall into the lot of Esav, you will merit to have a son who will destroy Esav. By the way, it's interesting. When Yaakov Avinu found out later that Yosef was still alive, the language that Yaakov Avinu uses is Vayomer Yisrael, Rav Oid Yosef B'ni Chai. Rav Oid Yosef B'ni Chai. And Rashi's bothered, what do these words mean? Rav and Oid. Rav Oid Yosef B'ni Chai. The Trumas Hadashan explains that the word Rav has a specific reference. The word Rav is what we call Esav. V'Rav Ya'avoid Tza'ir. The older brother will serve the younger brother. Says the Trumas Hadashan, when Yaakov found out that Yosef was still alive, he sent a message to Rav. Who's Rav? Esav. He said, Rav! Esav! Oid Yosef B'ni Chai, watch out! Yosef's still alive! I didn't go down! We're gonna get you! We're gonna destroy you! Rav! Esav! Oid Yosef B'ni Chai! So, Yosef is the destroyer of Esav. He's the nemesis of Esav. So we would expect that if Yosef ever encounters Esav, and by the way, it's interesting, we have an idea in Jewish thought there are two Mashiachs. There's Mashiach ben David and Mashiach ben Yosef. And the Vilna Gaon writes, Mashiach ben Yosef will take us out of Galos Esav. Because Yosef is compared to a shar, an ox, and Esav is compared to a para, bull, similar. As opposed to Mashiach ben David will take us out of Galos Yishmael. Yishmael is compared to a chamar, and Mashiach ben David is Ani v'roichev al chamar. They're both compared to the chamar. So we see that Esav is the nemesis, the destructive force that will eradicate Esav. So the question is, did Yosef ever meet Esav? Because if there was ever an encounter between Yosef and Esav, we would expect that to be the battle of the titans. That would be the battle of the century. Did Yosef ever meet Esav? The answer is yeah. When Yaakov Avinu was returning from the house of Lavan, so it says that Esav met Bilhah and her children, Zilpah and her children, Leah and her children, V'achar Cain Nigash Yosef v'Rachel. And then he encountered Yosef and Rachel. And what did Yosef say to Esav? Did Yosef and Esav go at it? There's not one word of interaction between Yosef and Esav. Isn't that unusual? If Yosef is the destructive force of Esav, isn't it unusual that Yosef did not say anything to Esav? Let's explain this further. When we say that Yosef is the nemesis of Esav, well, if Esav's koyach, if his power emanates from the mitzvah of honoring his father, then it has to be that Yosef is able to match him in this area. In fact, we mentioned that Esav excelled in kibbud av va'em, but that is the great merit of Yosef as well. Esav served his father in special begadim. Listen to how the Sefer Shevet Musar of Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen of Izmir reads the pasuk. The Yisrael ahaves Yosef mikol banav ki ben zikunim hu loy ve'asa loy kisoines pasim. Literally, Yaakov loved Yosef, so he made him special clothing. Says the Shevet Musar. Yaakov loved Yosef. You know why? Yosef made for himself a special garment with which to serve his father, so that Yosef would be empowered to destroy Esav. You know how great Esav excelled in kibbud av va'em? When Esav decided to sell the birthright to Yaakov, he said to himself, Hine anochi hoylech lamas. Anyway, I'm going to die. Why did Esav say, anyway, I'm going to die? So, the Sefer Shevet Musar writes in a different Sefer, he writes it in the Sefer Medrash Talpios, that Esav thought that he would die through the mitzvah of kibbud av va'em. You know why Esav went hunting every day? He went hunting to be able to catch delicious meat for his father. And hunting is a dangerous activity. You have to go out in the bush. Your life is in peril. So Esav figured that one day, sooner or later, his life would be taken. So we see that Esav daily risked his life to honor his father. And in fact, on that day that Yitzchak asked Esav, could you catch me some venison, catch me a catch? Esav said the word, Hineni, behold, here I am. Now, behold, here I am has a very specific connotation. Who said, behold, here I am? Yitzchak said that at the Akedah. And that is what Esav was doing. He was risking his life to service his father. Esav was risking his life to service his father. And therefore he said, Hineni, meaning, I'm going to counteract the Akedah. It's interesting. What was the merit of the Akedah? Reb David Tevel says the merit of the Akedah was not that Abraham was willing to shech Yitzchak. Hashem told Abraham to do it, so if God commanded him, well, he has no choice. What's he supposed to do? He had an explicit command from God. The zechus of the Akedah is the zechus of Kibbud Av V'Em, that Yitzchak listened to his father. When his father came and he said, God came to me, Yitzchak could have said, it's very nice, Dad, have a nice day. Go fly a kite. He had the respect to trust his father that indeed the Almighty appeared to him. So Yosef has to counteract the Kibbud Av V'Em of Esav. And therefore on that fateful day, Yaakov Avinu calls Yosef. He says, Yosef, Lech nara'eh eshloim achecha v'eshloim hatzayin. Would you mind go finding out about the whereabouts and the welfare of your brother and the sheep? Yosef knew he was endangering his life. His life would be in peril. The brothers were going to try to kill him. But Yosef responds, Hineni, behold, here I am. Yosef has to counteract the Kibbud Av V'Em of Esav. Measure for measure. This is a historic battle. They're at it throughout the generations. Yosef against Esav. By the way, we mentioned that Reb Aaron Leib Steinman pointed out that in our generation we have this unique phenomenon where grandparents often still have the opportunity to honor their own parents. But I think it's important to point out, not to be down, not to be despondent if a person does not have that opportunity. Because on the converse, we find by the story of Purim that Esther was a woman, ki ein la ava'im, who had no father and no mother. And the Medrash says not only did she have no father, no mother, but God takes an oath that the Redeemer in the times of Purim could only be someone who has no father and no mother. Now, why would that be? Why could the Redeemer only be someone who has no father or no mother? Interesting, Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz writes, similar to what we're saying, but in a way the exact opposite, that the mitzvah of honoring your father and mother is such a difficult mitzvah. The Gemara says, a frightening statement that one Amoira said, and you have to understand and the context of it, but fortunate is someone who does not have a father or mother, because it's a nearly impossible mitzvah to fulfill properly. And Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz writes that while Haman, in the times of Purim, was fueled and bolstered by the Kibbud Av of his patriarch and ancestor Esav, in order for the Jewish people to combat that and counteract that, we need someone who has the mitzvah of Kaveh Savich V'Esibecha in the highest, purest, most perfect sense. And how's that possible? Only someone who never saw their father and mother can have the highest level of Kibbud Av V'Em. How so? How is that possible? So Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz explains as follows. There's a principle in the Gemara. If somebody thinks to do a mitzvah, desires to do a mitzvah, yearns to do a mitzvah, and circumstances do not allow them, Hashem considers it as if they fulfilled the mitzvah. This is called chishev la'asais mitzvah. If one thinks to do a mitzvah, v'ne'enas, and they have an oines, they're extenuating circumstances, mala olav kilo asa. It's considered as if they did the mitzvah. But when God gifts you the mitzvah, what kind of mitzvah do you think He gifts you? He doesn't gift you a regular human mitzvah. You see, all the mitzvahs we do, even if we fulfill all the minutiae of the mitzvah and all the details of the mitzvah is going to be mitigated and limited by human shortcoming. It will never be with perfect love of God, with maximum fear of God, with awe, with dveikus. We're flesh and blood, and therefore our actions are never perfect. But when God sees somebody wanted to do a mitzvah, and He will reckon it as if they did the mitzvah, the type of mitzvah Rebbeinu Shalom bestows on the person is the perfect mitzvah. So the only one in the times of Purim who could counteract the kabed esavicha v'yasimecha of an Esav, who fueled and bolstered Haman, is a woman like Esther who had no father and had no mother. So the truth is, whatever circumstance you find yourself in life, if you're fortunate to have a father and mother, and you're fortunate that you could help them, realize this is the greatest gift in your life, because this is what will bring the Jewish people to the finish line and overcome and vanquish the forces of Esav. And if you don't have the good fortune to have parents, then realize that the chesed in it is try to yearn and wish you could fulfill the mitzvah of kibbud av va'em, and then in a sense you'll be credited with that mitzvah in an even greater sense of someone who actually fulfilled it. But coming back to Esav and Yosef, and this great historic battle of whose kibbud av va'em will carry the day. Although Esav honored his father in the most glorious way, there were a few ways that Esav's kibbud av va'em was lacking. First of all, Esav only honored his father when his father was alive, but he always awaited the day that his father would die so that he could kill Yaakov, because he didn't believe in honor of your father and mother after they die, even though our sages tell us that even more important than honoring them when they're alive is honoring them after they pass on. That's why we say Kaddish for a parent, or we learn Le'iloi Nishmasam, where we do mitzvahs in their merit. But there's one fatal flaw in the kibbud av va'em of Esav. And that is, even though Esav would give up his life for his father, but he never honored his mother. He didn't get along with his mother. In fact, Ramban writes that when Rivka passed away, Esav didn't go to her funeral because he hated her. So while Esav, in the realm of kibbud av, was the paragon, the quintessential performer of this mitzvah, he failed in the realm of kibbud em. And therefore, a beautiful insight we could suggest is that in that historic encounter between Esav and Yosef, remember the Psukim say that Esav encountered Leah and her children, and Bilhah and her children, and Zilpah and her children. V'achar kach nigash Yosef v'Rachel. Then Yosef approached with Rachel. And Rashi's bothered. Why Yosef and then Rachel? All the other mothers, first they approached and then their children. They were being protective of their children. No, Yosef said, my mother's very beautiful. I don't want this monster laying his dirty eyes on my mother. So Yosef stood up and he elevated himself and he blocked the view of Esav to Rachel. But I believe that's a very telling encounter. What Yosef, without saying a word, was telling Esav is, while you may excel in kibbud av, but I'm going to destroy you. Watch. Look at the care, the concern, the protection that I give my mother. And in that brief encounter, I believe Yosef delivered a major blow to Esav. You honor your father, but I am so careful not only to honor my father, but to honor my mother. It occurred to me, if you look in the Psukim, when Yaakov Avinu runs away to the house of Lavan, the pasuk says, "Vayihi kasher." This is in Parak Chav Tes pasuk Yud. When Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Lavan, the brother of his mother, and the sheep of Lavan, the brother of his mother. And Yaakov approached and he uncovered the stone and he gave to drink the sheep of Lavan, the brother of his mother. How many times is it going to say that Lavan's the brother of his mother? We got it already. We know who Lavan is. Why every time do we have to say how Lavan is the brother of his mother? Our Chaim HaKadosh says, it's the Torah emphasizing that every little interaction that Yaakov had with Lavan, he was mechavein, he had in mind to honor his mother who said that he should go to Lavan's house. So every time he encountered and involved himself with Lavan, he always reminded himself, this is the brother of my mother, this is the brother of my mother. I'm doing this to honor my mother, I'm doing this to honor my mother. It was so important for Yaakov to honor his mother. Why was that so important? Based on what we're learning, it becomes clear because Yaakov understood that while Esav excelled in Kibbud Av, in order to knock out Esav, the Jewish people, have to be excellent not only in honoring our father, but honoring our mother as well. And we could say that the honor that Yosef displayed to his mother was so essential to his reality. Why is he called Yosef? The word Yosef means Asaf Hashem Eschar Pasi. Asaf Hashem Eschar Pasi. Asaf Hashem Eschar Pasi means Rachel had no children. God covered up my shame. In other words, Yosef's whole reality was to protect his mother. That's the essence of Yosef. The essence of Yosef, in order to destroy Esav, is to protect his mother. Let's come back to what we asked. Why is Kibbud Av Va'em such an essential mitzvah that the battleground between the Jewish people and our enemies is dependent on honor your father and mother? That is what bolstered Haman in the times of Purim. That is what Yaakov was scared of from Esav. And Yaakov spent so many years working on Kibbud Aim in order to overcome Esav. It seemed, and as Rabbi Aaron Leib Steinman is saying, that we're in the final generation, what's going to deliver the final knockout blow to Esav is Kibbud Av Va'em. Why is this the crux? Why? There's so many mitzvahs in the Torah. Is this really the most important, in a historic sense of the battle between Yaakov and Esav? Says Rav Shimon Schwab, this is quoted in the Sefer Alei Higayon, that when Adam ate from the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden, he downgraded the whole world. He impugned the world. The entire world plummeted. Now man has to die. Now man has to earn a livelihood. Now there's suffering in childbirth and child rearing. Not only did he impugn the world, he impugned creation and all the mitzvahs of the Torah. He impugned man. He impugned reality. There's one mitzvah Adam did not defile, and that is Kibbud Av Va'em. Why is that? Because one thing Adam did not have in the Garden of Eden is he didn't have a father and a mother. And therefore the concept of Kibbud Av Va'em was unaffected from the sin of Adam. And therefore it remains in its pristine form. And therefore we could suggest that the mitzvah that will bring us back and rectify the world and bring the world back to the level it was supposed to be on when God created the world, it's all dependent on Kabed es avicha v'yasi mecha. That's a mitzvah that retains its most pristine form of all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Says Reb Shimon Schwab, that's the reason why when Yaakov Avinu came in to bring the dinner to his father smelled the scent of Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. This is what the Garden of Eden smelled like before the sin of Adam HaRishon. Because if you want to know what retains the original scent of the Garden of Eden, it's honor your father and your mother. That is why the historic battleground between Yaakov and Esav is over this particular mitzvah. And let us point out, I want to share with you an amazing comment of one of the Balei HaToisis, Moshav Zakenim. Why was Yaakov holding on to the foot of Esav? Why is he holding on to the foot? Wait a second. What's the rush? You're not going to win the race anyway. Esav's coming out first, so just wait a second. He said, my mother's having twins. She's going to have to open up her womb twice. It's going to be doubly painful. Let me spare my mother from any extra pain. She'll only open up once, and when Esav comes out, I'll be right behind him to save my mother from tsar and pain. Yaakov was holding on to the heel of Esav to be able to spare his mother tsar. Yes, that was a seminal moment in the life of Yaakov. Yes, this action defines the personality of the Jewish people. Because we don't just kibud av, we're also mechabed aim. We learn it from Yaakov Avinu. Where did Yosef get it from? His name was Yosef. To be Asaf Elikim es Cherpasi, to protect his mother. He got it from his father. His father was also named after the protection he offered his mother. As Tosfos explains, he was holding on to the heel of Esav in order to save his mother, Tsar. And I believe if you want to capture the essential difference between Yaakov and Esav, we go to the end of Parshas Toldos. And there, in the final psukim of Toldos, it says, Vayishma Yaakov el aviv el imay. Yaakov listened to his father and his mother, and he went to Padan Aram. Vayishma Yaakov el aviv el imay. To his father and to his mother. Not just el aviv my father and mother. To both of them. Next pasuk. Vayare Esav, Esav saw ki ra'os benois Canaan be'inei Yitzchak aviv. He saw his father didn't like these women in Canaan, so he went to marry someone else. Yaakov is concerned for the father and the mother. Esav, just the father. That's the difference. Therein lies the difference. You know, the Arizal had a holy custom on Friday night to kiss the hand of his mother. We could suggest, we know that Shabbos in time is what the Beis Hamikdash is in space. As Shabbos is coming in, that is the time to long for Mashiach. And therefore the Arizal understood that what will really deliver the final knockout blow is to emulate the midah of Yaakov Avinu, of Yosef HaTzadik, who are concerned not only for their father, but kabed es avicha v'es imecha. In the merit of us coming together to strengthen ourselves in this fifth commandment, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu grant us the long life and health that come from the mitzvah of kabed es avicha v'es imecha. May Hashem lengthen the life of our parents, give us opportunities to fulfill this glorious mitzvah, bring the Jewish people much closer to the finish line, and may we be zoicha to the bracha of Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem, where we're back to Gan Eden, and through the mitzvah of Kabed es Avicha v'Yasimecha, we'll be zoicha, we will merit the beautiful aroma of Migan Eden, Mikedem, the beautiful aroma of the Garden of Eden. Thank you so much for listening. Bracha v'Hatzlacha.